Homegrown Radio, brought to you by Leadership 2020. Ekaya, my home.
Welcome back to the Learn Crypto Africa podcast, where we talk all things cryptocurrency, all things emerging technology, and everything that you are interested in where the crypto world is concerned. And as we always remind you, we are not a financial institution. We are not financial advisors. We merely sit here and share our personal journeys and experiences with the blockchain technology and cryptocurrency. And if we ever do talk about wallets and how to invest and so on, it's mainly because we are sharing experiences with you. But we will also advise that if you do go into wallets and start trading in cryptocurrency, do make sure that you do your own research first. Make sure that you're in a safe platform and that you are using money that you can afford to lose. Who has money that they can afford to lose? That's just an empty statement. Shabs, how are you, my dear friend? Thank you again for joining us, and thank you for your time and always sharing your amazing knowledge on this crypto space with us. And today we're talking about proof of work and proof of stake. Welcome to it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back again. Yeah, thank you to your listeners and your viewers. Really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share.
Absolutely, man. So we did promise our ardent viewers last time that we're going to be speaking about the proof of work in blockchain as well as versus the proof of stake. Why do we need to care about those two items, and what does it mean for us, the man on the street?
Well, that's an interesting question, and trying to relate it to the man on the street.
Wow.
I think what's important here is understanding of exactly what is happening with the technology, and that's why you should care about it from an everyday man perspective.
Right.
You know? Understanding a little bit of how this technology works gives you the ability to be able to, like in your intro you mentioned, should you want to invest in a cryptocurrency, and you want to know which one is the best, you also want to know how the technology works, and what exactly they are doing, what's the use case.
Absolutely.
So to answer what is proof of work or proof of stake and the difference between them, I think the simplest answer would be it's the way to solve a puzzle in order for one to be able to create the link between the blockchains. Right? So what you have to understand is how a blockchain is created. It starts with a foundational block, which needs to be encrypted, and the block thereafter is encrypted in sequence, so that if you break one block, you literally need to break the whole chain, or at least change
or
a block.
Or you kick out whatever is faulty on that block, or you ignore it.
Or right? So you'd need to literally change the system, right? That is part of why the blockchain is immutable, because you have that. You have a very strong security system that allows you to be able to check and see if there's any tampering or so.
Right.
So the process of creating that block right, can either be done by two ways. Right. And those are called consensus protocols or consensus mechanism.
Consensus protocols and mechanisms. So that they all agree on a certain truth that the chain has arrived at.
Exactly.
Right.
So proof of stake and proof of works are the two most prevalent.
So which one burns a lot of electricity?
So that would be proof of work.
Right. Why?
So the original system based on Bitcoin. So Bitcoin was built on the blockchain system.
Yes.
And what they had used there was proof of work. Right.
Using computers and nodes and
computers to be able to solve a solution to create that block, right? So what happens with a blockchain, the bigger it gets, the more complex your mathematical puzzle
Yes.
become. So you need greater and
That's
greater
level of
computing.
difficulty.
Exactly.
Yes.
You need greater computing power to be able to solve
Within
that
a
solution.
fraction of time.
Within a fraction of time.
So that's where the energy burn comes in.
Exactly.
They say you
exactly.
can almost heat up an entire room with it.
Yeah, you can imagine, like, you're looking at what are we on now? 18,000 Bitcoins.
Bitcoin, yes, we are on
Yeah.
18,000 Bitcoins.
And you're looking at, everybody in the globe looking at the system, right? So the amount of computing power you'd need to satisfy our instant gratification, because
Right.
that's exactly what it is.
It is so strange
It
to say
needs
that.
to happen like that.
I have a machine, so it burns out my solar, so, because I supplement so that I don't use up too much electricity.
Yeah.
But if you walk into that room whilst my machine is on, it feels like a furnace. So no amount of heat, and so sometimes I have to switch it off just to give it a rest.
Yep.
So it explains the hard work, the proof of work that
goes
entailed in, the work that is entailed in those blocks.
Absolutely. Like, you can imagine, some people have warehouses, just dedicated to this.
With
to
hardware from end to end.
Hardware from end to end. This is what crypto mining is about. So when people talk about crypto mining, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about computing power to solve that puzzle in order to create a block.
Right.
And within the proof of work mechanism, you get rewarded
Right.
for that. So you get rewarded with a Bitcoin. And if
Yeah.
you look at the value of a Bitcoin,
Yes.
at the moment, it's worth it for you to solve that puzzle. So
You
there's
get rewarded, correction, with a fraction.
well, it's gotten to a fraction now. But you can imagine when guys started, right? It was worth it. But
It was
now
worth
the investment that is allocated to be a miner is not something small. It's major,
Right.
In order for you to keep up with the pace.
Yes, no, of course, the hardware, the electricity costs, and having to change your cards when they are faulty and so on. So it's an unending
lot.
upward hurdle, and it does not help that you get all these bear markets that drop your entire year's work to close to a standstill. So these the proof of work, proof of stake. Could we argue then that they have various use cases? Why would you leave proof of work and go to proof of stake?
So I think proof of work, because of some of the reasons that we put forward now, I think you need an alternative. And this is where proof of stake came in with the Ethereum protocol. So basically, what they had come up with is a different mechanism in that somebody can put forward a certain amount of, what would you call it? A certain amount of cryptocurrency.
Yes.
In order to be randomly selected
Right.
to solve the puzzle. So it's very different from where we came from with the proof of work, which says, okay, you have 1,000 different computers, and we're going to select somebody randomly to be able to solve this puzzle, right? Which meant that there's more and more computer. That ecosystem is growing because everybody wants to be able to be randomly chosen for that. Whereas proof of stake is saying, well, you're going to put a certain amount of your capital, so your crypto, right, to say that you want to be selected. Obviously, not everybody is going to come up with that amount in terms of capital, and not everybody is going to want to necessarily do that work. So that leaves it to a certain portion of nodes to be able to actually solve the problem.
Would you say then that it is, then it feeds to the whole, that it's sort of an elitist process, where if you don't have the money, you're never going to see the light and day in that, in generating blockchains or participating in the blockchains?
Yes and no. Yes, because it's very true in simplistic manner. But no, in that, just like with any technology or any innovation, the early bird catches the worm. So if you're in early, you're going to get the benefit of that, right? And that's where you literally build up your capital to be able to do this work. So
if we were trying to create a blockchain that is Africa based, would it be such a far-fetched thing? So if we all came together and said we're going to put in X amount of money and we're going to create a blockchain, first of all, would it be necessary? And second, what would it take in your point of view for us to actually create something like that?
I think simple answer to that, yes, we should. Yeah, we should be investing in this technology. Two, it is necessary. And maybe to elaborate on that is that we are now in a global system, right? And for us to be able to get some of the benefits of being in this global system, we need to participate.
Right.
So there are various things that Africa can offer to the rest of the world.
Yes.
So for example, we've got a lot of arable land.
Yeah.
You know, so we could be exporting to the world.
Yeah.
Having our own blockchain solution, which is based on logistics and traceability, to be able to export to the West, which we do now.
Yes.
We do now.
Using
right?
crypto to trade
You know,
without having to go through the painful trade exchange systems that we have in the continent.
We can do that. We can do that. So we definitely can use the solution to our benefit. And there's a lot of different use cases that we can use this for.
Right.
So we should be participating.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you.
Okay.
You're going to set up a consortium of blockchain-minded individuals, and we're going to seek for funding to create our own blockchain. How's that? I think it's about time.
I'm up for the challenge. There's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there that I know from the ecosystem.
You know, one of the biggest things that bother me at the moment is the fact that Lambda and ChatGPT, they're working endlessly to create content for their bots.
Yeah.
But like the internet, there's no one, or the Internet of Things, there's no one that actually sat tediously to build African content for the Internet of Things.
Yeah.
What you end up with is a situation where the continent is consuming rather than creating. And they give us a special name. They call us good adopters or early adopters or whatever adopters we are. So should we not then create our own platform? I mean, the playing field is there.
Yeah.
But if you got enough people to work on this blockchain and put content there that is Africa-based, because a worry that I have is that we're going to get to a place where we've got colonization of cultures, right? Where that's just one problem. Then you're going to have a problem of a total extinction of some cultures. Because the data that is going in there, one is rushed, two is that it's Western data. So even your kids, when we go into machine learning, are only going to be learning from the perspective of Western data. Now you ask, why should we care? But we should if you want to maintain the culture of the continent.
We should.
And that will exist on our own blockchain.
Yeah, we should. And that is based on society, how we want to evolve as a people. I kind of go back a couple of steps, you know. Us as Africans, we talk a lot about culture, you know. We are very proud of our culture, right? But we don't necessarily see the evolution of our culture, right? So culture is predominantly set in this is what we do, right? But when you think about it, at least for me, culture evolves, right? We used to do certain things at a certain time that benefited us as a community for certain reasons. But if the society around us has changed, we need to be able to change with that.
Fair enough. But if that
Right.
society around us has changed, and it has changed leaning on the Western side,
Yeah.
it's not fair and right to say that we need to evolve with that. Because we could also evolve within our own cultures, but we're evolving with cultures that have nothing to do with us. And we start embracing them more than the people that even put the cultures there in the first place. You know, you're not going to find the Indians going so deep in American culture that they forget their Diwali, they forget how to dress, they forget their speaking, they maintain their cultures. But Africa tends to just fully adopt, and that's why I don't like adoption. They fully adopt. It's all or nothing. so much adoption that you don't recognize your original self.
Yeah. Look, I think take that with a pinch of salt.
Right.
Because there are a lot of Africans that are so-called traditional. Right? There's a major group that
There's
we
nothing
can
wrong
point
with
to
that.
say that they're
Yeah.
traditional.
Yeah.
Right? So when I'm talking about the evolution of culture, it's also coming from that base, right? We don't lose who we are just because we are evolving. Like, I don't stop being a Congolese because I jump into a car, right? The car is just a means of transport, right? But now we need to be able to control our narrative, right? When we come to the spaces that we're talking about, Lambda and ChatGPT, what goes in there, right? So what will it say about a Congolese person? Do I get to dictate that narrative, or does somebody else dictate it for me?
I've got a whole lot of things in my head about what it would say about a Congolese. Stop the video.
Right? So I think, that's where we as Africans can participate, controlling our narratives.
Absolutely.
And it's starting to change. There's more.
Who's changing it though? We've got to change it. We have to put the narrative in there. We have to define the narrative
We do,
that
but
goes in there.
But I think we underestimate the power of the African diaspora, and the African diaspora is now playing a really important part in trying to be able to share not just their Western experience,
Are
but
you talking about TikTok?
no, not TikTok. No, not TikTok, not at all, not at all.
Thank goodness for TikTok.
Yeah, but we're able to share our experiences, and we can show how proud we are of where we come from, right? And the more we get content like that in these different spaces,
we need intentional content.
it is, because I mean, if you sit and you think about what the Western media puts in front of their population about Africa, it's all the worst part about us.
Go into ChatGPT now and ask for anything that is about your culture and traditions, and see the kind of answers you're going to get. You'll be shocked. But we got to feed that. We got to feed these narratives. We got to feed into them.
Absolutely, and I don't necessarily think that ChatGPT caters for every Westerner, right? There's certain spaces where it's agreed, it's implicit. This is how the Westerners are, and then there's their direct culture. A Nordic person is very different from the French, and that's very different from an American, But there is at least a base to say, okay, Westerners, you can understand that this is roundabout where they play, right? So the question now is for us to be able to do the same,
Yeah, we have to move fast, and we have to create our own bots. We are so far behind, because even within the Internet of Things, we have not input as much as we should have, where our protection of who we are is concerned. There's the issue of the ChatGPTs, the Lambdas, becoming sentient, where they're taking on human-like personalities and characteristics. And what personalities and characteristics will they adopt? Now, they did mention that they took the chat GPTs and the Lambdas into the darkest spaces of the internet so that they don't become racist. Good enough, thank you. Thanks,
There's
well.
bias.
Yeah,
There's always going to be some level of bias.
Well, look, that just takes care of one social factor. Don't be racist.
Yeah.
Don't use cuss words. That's just one.
Yeah.
What about the fact that we just do not have enough in there to maintain who we are? So say, for example, I'm not a traditionalist, I'm not a culturist, but I want to protect who I am and my roots and where I come from. And I want the future generations to still know about the species that is the African human.
Yeah.
And if this technology is taking sentient qualities, whose qualities are they taking? I'm not asking you this question, but I think it's things that we got to interrogate. We have to keep asking.
We have to think about some of the things that we believe. We have to think about why we believe them, and we have to think about how they're serving us. There's a great conversation that happens in the financial space. Black tax. God forbid I went to black tax.
Is black tax a bad thing?
That's
another thing. Because I think black tax is the best thing that's ever happened to us.
I don't necessarily think so,
Yeah.
right? Because I like history, so I like going back and just checking how we evolved, how different people evolved, right? We all started from the same base, right? There's a mom, there's a dad, you have children, you need your children to be able to help you to grow whatever it is that you're growing, you know? We were all, most of us, farmers at some point, right? So you needed the human labor in order for you to get, some of your product out the ground, right? So that's where the importance of having kids, and many kids you have, the more wealthier you'll become, because you now have labor.
The son will take care of the household. If you've got daughters, there's lobola. There's a lot of. The more I look into it, Shabs, now I see that the more that I look at our cultures, the more I realize that our cultures are actually the real sustainers of the human race. If you look at the industrial revolutions and how they have taken and extracted from the earth to get us to where we are now, and the more that I go into the villages, the more I realize that this is the right way to live. I studied medicine, and I keep saying I need to unlearn the medicine that I studied, because the real medicine is in the medicine that was practiced back in our days. So there's so much that has been put to us and imposed on us, which is not necessarily correct, and then they framed it in adoption, those are the fancy words that are used to take over things. Civilization, adoption,
but it's also just because
education.
They take our brightest, right? And not to make this a podcast about the West and Africans, but this is the reality we in. They take our brightest.
Well, it is about it, because if you think about blockchain's intention is to decentralize power back to the people.
But
yes, it is.
It?
Well, the question of does
it go back to the people?
The intent.
The intent
in the first place. You remember, it was a rebellious movement against the financial fall back in 2008. So the intent was to say, you've got too much power. Too little people have too much power over too many people. So how do we change that? Let's decentralize some of this power. What is the first form of power? Financial power. If we start with financial power, you'll get to voting power later. But if you start with the thing that hurts the most, or that builds the most, or that divides the most, which is financial power, then maybe we will have scratched the tip of the iceberg. So it boils down to that. That's why I always say that the Satoshi Nakamoto's of this world, and it's not just one person that came to this point, not just Satoshi. It's everybody that built all the little ingredients that would ultimately get us to this protocol of decentralization. And then Satoshi would be the one that really put it all together and baked the cake.
No, I completely
But we
agree.
need to get to that place.
We need to. I think what's important for us is to, one, be able to control our narrative, right? We need to use the solutions that have been built, that are working to our benefit so that we can see the results in the future.
Yeah.
And we need to be able to determine what sort of future we want to see.
Absolutely.
You know, I think those are bigger and greater things that we need to solve rather than just the solution, because the solution is supposed to serve us.
Absolutely.
Right? So we need to understand exactly where we want to go as a people and what we want to see in order for us to now move, into that space.
Right.
Because right now, I feel like there's a lot of hype about some of these things, but we're not dealing with the core issues of our societies.
Yes.
So, you bring in new technology, but it's never going to be adopted because we haven't dealt with the core issues. Right?
And some of the technology is not there to serve a greater good. We can talk about them, but right now is not the time. We'll unpack some of them. However, as a continent, we need to, first of all, realize that we're sitting in a crisis. The crisis is in that you could totally be recolonized. You could totally be shut out of the systems that are being built within the new technologies.
Absolutely.
And we have to acknowledge that.
Yep.
And once we acknowledge that, then we start looking at what are the solutions that are out there that have been built by the people.
Yeah.
And innovate around those, or even if you don't innovate, copy paste, but create something that will work for us to maintain and preserve our essence, our own essence.
Yeah.
And I think that there's enough young minds and there's enough intelligence in the continent to actually build upon the technologies. However, I feel that we are totally distracted. And that's why we have Learn Crypto Africa, so that we can continue to educate, to remind you that we have various catastrophes sitting in various pockets of our society. And we need to clean them out. We need to understand what they are.
Yeah.
And then work around building a solution that works for us and still preserve and maintain who we are as a people.
I totally agree with you. I honestly think that the moment we take it upon ourselves, right, to take the bull by the horn, the more we're going to be intentional about what we do and where we go, right? Which is, it really is the basis of building anything. Whether you think about it from a society perspective or from a technology perspective, you need that base. You need to know where you're going.
Absolutely. So if you're watching, please click like, please subscribe to our channel. And if you care enough, and I know that there's a lot of people in the tech organizations that care about this conversation, please consider funding a blockchain that is Africa-based, or blockchains that are based in minority of communities. It could be India, it could be the Philippines, everywhere where people are totally being shut out of the movement in terms of where blockchain technology is going. Get involved, help us raise funds, help us to build these blockchains, help us to feed into the system so that whole cultures will not be forgotten or depleted in the future. Thank you once again. Learn Crypto Africa. Catch us again, and we'll be sharing with you what our next series is over time, so do not leave us on this channel.